I'm going to ask you all to welcome Dr. Jo Melvin on the left, who is a reader in archives and special collections right here at Chelsea College of Art. And she'll be chairing this next session on collaborations. When she's not curating, writing, or teaching, Jo is working on her own catalogue resonate project, The Complete Works of Barry Flanagan, to be published in 2018. I'm going to leave Jo to introduce her distinguished panelists.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. I'm delighted to be joined by Lindsay Arvelet, who's working on the Sol LeWitt wall drawings catalogue and has been doing this for the past 3 years. And also Dietmar Elgar, who began working with Gerhard Richter, I believe 31 years ago, and has been working on the catalogue raisonné not for all that time. But I'd like to start off with Lindsay, who's going to introduce a key critical situation that she's uncovered in the compilation process of the raisonné.
Hi. So I spoke to Jo briefly before we met in New York, and the idea of collaboration for the catalogue raisonné is a very important one. Firstly, because Sol's practice itself was all about collaboration, in particular the wall drawing practice. So we have all kinds of interesting things that have transpired because of these collaborations. So many of you might know this body of work, but by the time Sol made his second wall drawing, he was no longer present physically to create those wall drawings. So he would either, no email, obviously. He would either send a postcard, a letter, a fax, tell someone in person how to create the work. So what we have here is wall drawing 72. This was actually done in Montreal in 1971. A lot of my research is looking at images, not objects. We don't have objects, we have ideas. So we really start with the idea, which is, luckily for us, was cataloged by Sol in his own lifetime. 1968, he began wall drawing practice. 1984 was the first catalogue raisonné published by himself and the Kunsthal Bern. He had subsequent catalogue raisonnés in 88 and 94. So when I look at this image, I look at a few different things. I look at what I'm looking at, obviously the content, which is very important. I look at the title that Sol cataloged himself. What has been really exciting for us in researching this is that things don't always, I guess, what we have is not always what is the real fact, right? So in this case, we see, this is the first of two wall drawings, I'll put those in quotations, on glass. This wasn't something that he continued to do. It was an experiment, obviously. And this was published not in the catalogue raisonné because it was a limited photography, but in a few other places, local articles and things of that nature. And then during the research, we found a slide, and it's a color slide. And we digitized it, and we have this, which of course it's terrible reproduction here on the screen, but as you can see, this is actually a color work. The title that was recorded in the catalogue raisonné is Black Parallel Lines on Glass. So what we find here is clearly not what actually happened. Not only do we have a color version now, we have the actual instructions that were probably typewritten out, in which Sol LeWitt gave the drafter the option of doing it in vertical or horizontal. So right here you have horizontal lines. So what we've discovered is that there was the option of doing it vertically. And the collaborative nature of that extends to the conversations that we then have with the estate, in which we bring forth this kind of new evidence. And then we can actually create notes, sometimes amending titles to the original artist's instructions. And I think this is a really wonderful example of kind of the range that we're looking at. My second example here, if I can. Maybe?
Maybe shoot it.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
This is our next example. This is an Arcs in Line work. This is actually an installation shot from 1979 at Museum of Contemporary Art, Chicago. This was part of one of the first kind of like traveling retrospectives that began at the Museum of Modern Art, 1978. What we've had is this image of a work that we thought was a subsequent installation of a work that began at the Museum of Modern Art in 1978. So fine, we have many installations of the same works. This is very common. We actually, just a few years ago, we were getting information from the Museum of Contemporary Art because a work, they had a retrospective that traveled there in 2000 as well. And they sent us, well, if I can. They sent us this. And this is quite a different work than what we originally thought, yeah. And what is really wonderful about this is that Saul was not present in Chicago when this was installed, but he would have corresponded with his drafters about this. This blue wall and ceiling was actually left over from a previous exhibition. And, you know, on the fly, you know, decision happens, yeah. And so we have a work that was thought to have been on a black wall with white chalk is now on a blue wall. But this information was not kind of cataloged. Yeah. The memory was lost. And in 2000, when the retrospective happened at MCA Chicago, I think Saul thought, maybe it was somewhere in his memory, but he said, I want to do something on a blue wall. Mm-hmm. So this work was installed at MCA Chicago in 2000 and given wall drawing number 146A, which would be an installation variation.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary story of resituating a work, which is already a work, into a new context, so that it then has two different identification numbers.
Absolutely.
And revealing the hidden story of the collaboration process of that became part of your research.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's a really great way to kick us off. And Dietmar, if you would give us your, if you would talk to us about your brief intro.
Yes. Okay. So I'm speaking about the Gerhard Richter Catalog Raisonné project. So research for this current Catalog Raisonné project, there are others before, or at least one before, had started as a private project in 2003. It was incorporated in the Gerhard Richter Archive when I became the archive's founding director in 2006, so 3 years later. So I started it privately on the evenings and weekends, but it would never have succeeded like this because of lacking time. So we were happy that we could make it the main project of the archive, but it's not a full-time project. And we have a lot of other work that we did at the archive. So the archive is a public institution of the state art collections in Dresden, Staatliche Kunstsammlung in Dresden, financed by the state of Saxony with substantial sponsoring from private sources. And this is not only the artist. The Gerhard Richter Archive is based on three standpoints. We are collecting all material on Gerhard Richter, books, catalogs, which are also important source material for the catalog Resonate, so it serves it's positive for two things. So it's good for the archive to collect all this material, and we also need these books and catalogs to use them for the catalog Resonate. And we have posters, we have invitation cards, and we have a lot of other ephemera material. We have an extensive photo and film library, original documents, and we have some correspondence, and we also have some original artworks. See, oh, this is the archive. And we get just in the process of getting more space. And these, the steel construction work and the color charts in the back are owned by the Gerhard Richter Archive. The archive is, this is the second of our duties, is supporting projects by art historians, and we are answering any kinds of questions about the artist. We sometimes deal like a press people for the artist, and scholars can visit the archive, but have to make a confirmation in an appointment before, and also inform us a little bit about their project, so that we can look for material for them that when they come, they have something to do already, and because at the beginning they came and we do not know what they want to research, and then they say, want to know something about the October cycle, and then we have to run and find them the material. So we asked in advance what the issue is that they would do research on.
Dietmar, can I ask you to tell us a bit about, because I know we don't have such a very long time on this panel today.
I'm only on the first page.
Yes, no, I know. But it's extremely interesting. I'd be very, very grateful if you could tell us something about the numbering system and how you've been going through this.
The numbering system comes also, yes.
Yeah.
So I guess it's the archive is only, it soon ends.
Yeah.
And then we come to the catalog Resonate. And so we also are consulting museums and curators and sending out loan letters to private collectors that we do not release addresses of. And then at the third, we have our own project, so the Catalog Resonate is our biggest project. We also have book projects. We have a symposium like this on the work of Gerhard Richter. And we are also, which might be important also in the context of the Catalog Resonate, we are writing out our certificates of authenticity. And so we examine works together with the artist, and we write out official papers saying that this is an authentic work by Gerhard Richter, which is mostly the case with paper works and only very few for paintings. We have a very close cooperation and more or less permanent attention at the art studio of the artist. So I see him, I would say, every week. And so we have close contact. It's more than 10 years now since we started, which is very important for both for the archive and for the Catalog Resonate project. Gerhard Richter has always been interested in ordering, cataloging, and archiving his artistic work. In the late 1960s, he started to assign numbers to his works. His official catalog of works started with number 1 for the painting Tisch, there's no image here, from 1962, and currently ends with number 944 for the most recent abstract works. This is how he signs the back of his paintings. And this is nearly one of the very final ones. It's number 940-3. And it has sub-numbers like the dash numbers, and there are more than 3,300 works in total. Editions, drawings, and watercolors have generally been excluded from this numbering system. It's mostly for painting, sculptures, and have sometimes also their own catalog resonates, like on editions and drawings, their catalog resonates out, and another one for overpainted photographs is to come soon.
And what of the place for the, if we could move to the place for the ones that Gerhard Richter excluded early on? and how you're dealing
Okay.
with those
why
ones.
don't you let me just
Yeah.
go
Okay.
on, and then we come to all the issues.
All right,
you're-
but
you're
we're
so
running out of
interested
time.
in
Yes,
to-
I'm
to
very
hear
interested.
about.
I'm just anxious about the time.
Okay, on first sight, it seems that Richter has limited this numbering system to his paintings and sculptures. Only a closer look reveals that there are also some oil on paper with a number, pencil on canvas, pencil on paper, behind glass paintings, even photographs, and most recently, digital prints included. So also, some of these works have this kind of numbering system. The works Richter and Norbert with a number are not limited to a specific medium. It is the specific character and quality of the works that unites them and distinguishes them as a specific body of work. It is the decision of the artist what he regards as a work to be included in the catalogue raisonné, and it is the copyright law that enables him or his heir for the following 70 years, at least in Germany it's 70 years after the artist's death, to make this decision. It is not generally up to the editor of the catalogue raisonné if a painting is an official work or if it is an incomplete or discarded work. With its numbering system, Richter has made his decision clear from the beginning on, and the current catalogue raisonné, what we are doing now, is following this concept by the artist legitimized and by the artist's intention and his copyright. Insofar, this catalogue is not the catalogue of all paintings and sculptures, and as it may seem at the first sight, but the catalogue raisonné of all numbered works. So we are doing the catalogue raisonné of the numbered works and follow the numbers of the artist. What does not have a number is also not included, at least not in this catalogue raisonné. This is obviously with works like editions or so. Then you say, no, it's not in this. You never would think that it should be in this. It can be another question with the early works, but also for me, this is absolutely clear. And we also follow with his numbers. So we don't have a different numbering system. He has his dash numbers, we use the same numbers. Otherwise, there would be a total confusion if we would number them with our own numbering system that only has full numbers or so. Actually, there are some additional paintings existing. The archive is documenting these works, and we are assigning certificates of authenticity for them, describing them as authentic but not included in the artist's catalogue of numbered works. The reasons why these works are not included are manifold. In the preface of the first volume of the catalogue raisonné, I've made the following note. There are paintings that the artist has never numbered. Some of them were works Richter disliked because he considered them failures. Others were gifts to friends, while still others were commissioned for commercial purpose and had no artistic value for Richter at the time. Every one and a while, he simply forgot to record paintings on his list. So when he forgot something, we later assigned a number. In discussion with him, we had also assigned works with a number when there was a group in a former catalogue that said about 10 works under this number 70 sheets, turn sheets, and so about 10 works. So now we gave them, each of them, a number, and it turned out they were not 10, they were 15 or so. We have 15 separate numbers now. When the first volume had been published, we had been questioned for not including Richter's early work from Dresden before 1961, and from his first year at the Academy in Düsseldorf in 1961-62. There is a general issue each catalogue raisonné is confronted with. What to include and where to start with. Is each drawing made as a 15-year-old or each student work worth to be included in the catalogue raisonné? Each catalogue raisonné, I think, is facing this problem, and each has to find its answer. So I know that at Klee, they put in works that he made as a 3-year-old. So it starts with very, very childish drawings. And in the case of Klee, I can understand this, because his work also later has some issues that has this childish approach. For Richter, I can also turn on with an interview. In an interview earlier this year with a nationwide weekly German newspaper, Die Zeit, Richter has specified his attitude. None of these works from Dresden is a work in its own right. They only make sense within their context. After I came to the West, I still experimented a great deal, and much of what I did have rejected and destroyed. Until one day I said to myself, now it's time to start and to begin and number the catalog, which not only includes but also rejects. So the situation was, in the Dresden work is a totally separate work. It has a different context, it has different intent, and it's totally different. It's not what we would see at Gerhard Richter. So when he started with number 1, which is a painting Tisch, and there's works that are also executed in the first year at university in Düsseldorf, that is a mix of abstract influences and holding on to what he did in the German Democratic Republic in Dresden. So, but when he started with number 1, with a Tisch, this was another interest. This wasn't related to pop art. It was related to photographic images, to the situation in the West, to commercial images, to his family, and images from his family. It was a totally different body of work, and it was a totally different interest in his work. So it was something that was fully separated from what he did in Dresden. So it would not make any sense to have a catalog raisonné of 6 volumes as we do it, and have like 2 volumes in advance with works from the Dresden period.
Thank you. I think that was extremely interesting. I'm going to cut you short because otherwise we won't have any chance to go. This is very, very, very interesting. And both
okay, maybe we can
we can come back. Yeah, we can come back to it. But both of you have approached the almost like the redesignation of works as works in different contexts through different material coming alight. And what I'd like you to talk about is how these processes of collaboration are teased and tested with the presence of the artist or without the presence of the artist. In your case, it's documentation that you've encountered through drafters and through notes and through his archive. And with Dietmar, it's through discussion with the artist himself. So if you could say a little bit about that process of decision-making, what is included, what is excluded?
Sure. For Saul had a similar way of numbering his works. They were typically given a number once they were actually installed. 1972 is the first kind of formalized list that was published in Arts Magazine. A lot of works were installed all over the world without him being present. So, as I mentioned, a lot of what we know and what we can confirm is based on documentation either found in archives or in Saul's own
and
studio
that documentation
archive.
Takes different forms, doesn't
Absolutely,
it? Photographic, correspondence.
Yeah, absolutely. So instructions, written instructions, preparatory drawings were very important. So as they got more complicated, Saul would draw them out, or he would draw them out and a drafter would be present and adapt those for the space, because a lot of times he would ask for, space, space requirements or plans, and they would not exactly match when the drafter got there. And the conditions were always kind of the unknown. The caption information for the wall drawings involve the instructions or the title. Obviously, the instructions are usually
the process.
The process, and they are, some of them are, full page titles because it's just
because it's so complicated.
Verbatim. It is what it is, and then you'll have some shorter kind of series titles, what we've come across is in trying to confirm the factual content of the actual title matching the content of what was installed, or the actual instructions provided by the artist often differs quite a bit. We also are trying to verify the drafters' names, which were very important, since Saul was not actually present there. He is the artist, but he would give credit to those who first installed it. So it's this kind of collaborative aspect there.
And are you documenting their names in the resume
Absolutely.
alongside? Yeah.
So part of our research is not only looking at the work, verifying the content of the work versus the intent or the instructions, the people that were present, and a lot of times, we have access to Saul's personal notebooks, or we have sometimes the museums took those names down.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's an absence of those names. So we really have been working very, very hard to verify those
Your
things.
detectives.
Yes, exactly. So sometimes what's recorded is misspelled, so we can't find the person, and then we find that person, through all kinds of circuitous kind of ways. But and so as we're going along, as we're trying to verify all of this first installation information, we really, that is a collaboration in and of itself. We have to rely a lot on those documents, but also recollection. And we're lucky that 68 isn't that long ago, so we do have
And
the ability.
Are you taping these discussions?
We are really, we're really relying on email. And I'll say this, we will be publishing digitally next year. So I started the project, it was intended to be a digital project. So, and when I inherited an archive from the studio, it had been digitized.
Yeah.
So I think in digital terms, as far as what we're doing.
Yeah.
So kind of back to what we do with this numbering system.
Exactly.
These numbers were already, created. They're chronological, so they should be matching kind of a chronological dating system. But what we found out is these dates aren't always right. We now have a first installation that should have been, or thought to be 2000 is now 1979. So the ordering will be off. We're not changing the numbers. It's just, that's just going to have to stay. We have to have something there. We have also discovered new works, and we're still kind of going through the process of talking to the estate, bringing those examples to them.
Yeah.
Are these, we have installation variations. Saul was very, he loved to adapt works. So we have the works that are adapted for intentionally. Sometimes we have the works that were adapted in ways that were perhaps not intentional.
Yeah.
And then we have works that were created as variations from existing works. And he began doing that in his lifetime. So you would have something
and each of these are authorized by the numbering system.
Yeah, so it's like we would have wall drawing 146, and then that variation off of that would become 146A.
Yeah.
And this was, something he had created. So there has been a process of fully elaborating on that, and
on
also
that system,
discovering works that were clearly derived from works that are quite distinct.
Yeah. No, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And Dietmar, you have regular discussions with Gerhard Richter on this business of...
regarding the numbering system, or what is in, what is out.
Yes, what is in,
so
what is out,
there were things that were out from the beginning, so nothing that's in gets out. That's not the case. But there were some things that were out at the beginning, mostly in the 60s, so he was a little bit freely, and he threw things away, and people came, or assistant came.
And those things that have been thrown away, had they turned up because they'd been photographed somewhere? Were they known about because they'd been photographed somewhere, so a photograph came to
Yes,
us?
so there were things that have been covered but thrown away, and others been in the garbage or nearly in the garbage, and somebody said, before you throw it away, why don't you give it to me? I like it.
Yeah.
And he was very generous, and he gave it away, and then 30 years later it turns up at the market or so.
Yeah.
And even now sometimes we get confronted with these works, and we have to think about if it should be get a number now, so 30 years later or not, and then we discuss this with the artist.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it gets a number and sometimes not.
Yeah.
It never had a number.
Yeah.
Mostly it was like thrown away material or
Yeah.
forgotten material.
Yeah.
He's more accurate now, and he's not giving away things like this. He overpaints things, or it's really destroyed when it's destroyed. So the situation with paintings outside of the numbering system is a question about the 60s, early 70s.
Okay.
But sometimes we have things like this, and then we use, and when Richter says he does not want to give a number, because it was garbage at that point,
yeah.
when he did it, and it's for him it's garbage now,
Yeah.
but it's authentic, then we write out this kind of authenticity
Yeah.
certificate that says it is authentic, it's by Gerhard Richter,
Yeah,
but
but it's not a
in
work.
this catalog of
Yeah,
numbered
yeah,
works, and
yeah.
will also not get in.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating and a very, very interesting territory.
And there's a specific question also with authenticity. What we are confronted with, that you, also me, usually you would think the artist is the best one who knows what is authentic or not. And but we are mostly the police when there's a question of fakes or so, really
Yeah.
fakes, not.
No.
Not forgotten numbers, then they are more lucky with somebody, a third party, who says this
Yes.
is authentic, not the
Yeah.
artist, because the other party who has this fake work
Yeah.
will be saying, oh yes, it was bought it from him, and now he's saying it's a fake.
And he did it on a
because
napkin or something. Yeah.
he
yeah.
sold it
yeah.
besides of
Yeah.
tax.
Exactly.
Didn't pay tax for it. So it's, for them it's better not the artists deciding about fake
Yeah.
or not, but
An external body with a
party
legal team.
like us.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Thank you very much. I'm sure I'd love to carry on this between the three of us, but I'm sure there are questions in the audience. I'd like to open up. I think we have time for some questions.
I'd like to ask a question about, do you analyse the impact of the numbers on the market? You know, so obviously from a market point of view, there's an interest in whether works are verified or not. But I'm wondering from the point of view of the archive or the work you're doing, there is any analysis done on the impact of the system?
There are others who are doing things like this, so they are like ArtNet or something, sometimes doing these listings or so how much the volume was in 1 year that was sold. So with Gerhard, he's one of the most merchandised artists in auctions and on market. So it's in the auction houses, it's one of the artists with the most works going through, and also in galleries. We have lists in provenance lists. This is what also makes it, where we have, I just 2 days ago, I came over, it was like in 5 years, we had 6 galleries. Also, you see, which is, this is also an interesting point, that the work goes from one gallery to the next, and to the next, and to the next, and to the next. And then only the first private collector comes in. And that makes it more and more expensive.
Saul not only numbered his works, but within those works, often there are parts or figures or all kinds of divisions within even one work. Sometimes those parts are considered one unit, sometimes they're considered separate units under one kind of unifying idea. As far as market goes, I imagine when you have something that you want something, an early work, and then we find out the date is later or something like that, that can be, I suppose, a consideration for people purchasing work. Or is that work the entire concept? Are we getting the single work? So I think when we have I think Lewitt's system is complex, confuses some, especially those working to sell the work or explain the work. Not many people can do it. And I think when we get questions about titles and understanding how how those work. I think that's where I think we are going to make a huge kind of impact on Lewitt's work.
Yeah, who has
Who we're going to make upset, I don't know. That's yet to be determined.
I
but
think, could you tell us about, in general terms, when a private collector sells a work that's installed on a wall, let's say in a wall in New York, and sells it to someone who's living in Washington, what is the process that they go through for its installation? In terms of the prescription of the drafting and so on.
So if one wants to sell their work and it is installed, generally you must paint it over before it transfers. That is not always the case. Not often, actually. But we've found some in a wall drawing in Lisbon that we thought disappeared, but someone had built a wall in front of it, and now someone's got a restaurant. They said, "Oh, wonderful, we have a Sol LeWitt," and it's now in all their press photography. So, unfortunately, owned by someone else currently. So, we don't get it. We notify of that discovery, but we're not. We're not sending the email to say paint that over because I don't want to get involved.
No, that's not your role.
Yeah. So, like we, sorry.
It was the process that you go through when a work is transferred to it, when someone buys it and installs it.
So we,
the instructions to the drafters.
The estate is the center point for that. So when the work is sold, everyone should be contacting the estate. And the team of drafters that installed the work, a lot of them are still around, and they're part of our conversations every day. So it is technically supposed to go through the estate. So any sort of reciting would be discussed through them. So that really helps us actually a lot in tracking down installation history, which we don't have.
You don't have access to it, but you have access to it.
We do. We have databases and whatnot. And we focus heavily within this catalog. We focus heavily on installation history. We catalog installation variations, which is quite I think a new kind of strategy for conceptual art. We want to show that the catalog reflects the personality of LeWitt and that the works themselves changed. I always refer to this as like a breathing catalog. It's not ending, right? The installations will go on.
Ongoing, always ongoing.
Yeah, always ongoing. So for us, this digital format really helps us not only to show installation history, so we have many, many photos. We have as many photos as we can possibly manage to show that. We have notes on those images as well. So we can, our job is not to define the work per se.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Thank you both very much. We're going to, do we have time for one question? One gentleman put his hand up so quickly, I would hate not to.
Yeah, I'm very interested by this concept of whether or not you include works that have been destroyed. So for those of us that have written catalogue raisonnés of artists who are dead, and paintings have been, well-recorded paintings have subsequently been destroyed either by the artist or the artist's wife or daughter or whatever else. For me, those paintings are historically important. They're practically destroyed, but historically very important in terms of understanding the artist's evolution. So, from the point of view of deceased artists, I would say that we include destroyed works, and it's very interesting that for living artists, you've got a different approach.
Okay. Well, the answer is quick. So if there is a number, so the number is still existing when it is later destroyed or overpainted, there's still the number. So we try to have also the image to this number, and it says destroyed. Yes. And we're lucky when we can illustrate it with a number, and sometimes it said overpainted, and we show it here, and we have it with a new number again as the overpainted work. So we illustrate and list it, because when it has a number, and mostly it has a number even if it's destroyed, then we can, it's included.
I include work of Barry Flanagan's that has disappeared if it has been documented and exhibited. So it's in the resume.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.